Rahul from ReCircle.
Yes, hi, Ipsita. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Happy, National Startup Day, Rahul. Welcome, and let's hear what you're building. What's the problem statement you're addressing?
Sure. So we are a circular economy waste management company based out of India, looking at tackling the waste management sector itself. Within that, plastics is the main area that we are looking at working towards. So what we're building at ReCircle is essentially a traceable reverse supply chain for waste, where we track plastic waste right from the source of collection to the final processing of material. Now, how we've done this is that we created a partner-based inclusive business model where we work with informal waste aggregators, scrap dealers, waste management companies. So like you would know that India has a large informal waste economy that actually works in the background to collect all the waste from the ecosystem itself. Now, while these people are informal, but without them, what we believe is that that none of the waste management in our country would actually technically happen without this informal
Right.
sector. So what we've done is that we partner with these informal waste collectors ecosystem. We make sure that there's no child labor, proper working condition, work on capacity building on their end to ensure that they are connected with government schemes, have digital modes of payments. Once they are onboarded into our system, they help us collect plastic waste from across the country. We then channelize this to the closest recycler or waste processor, which is located to them itself. So while we are located in Mumbai, but if the material gets collected from, let's say, Guwahati in Assam, it will be sent for a recycling closest to Assam itself. Now, we built our own technology platform called Line01, which actually tracks and traces this material from the source to the collection to the recycling. Now, the material that flows through our supply chain is then converted into plastic credits, which we then sell to brands like Unilever, Coca-Cola, Nestle, Mondelez, essentially FMCG companies that are going plastic neutral with us, taking the responsibility of offsetting their entire footprint with us itself. We've till date recovered over 161,000 tons of material. Now, while this number might feel arbitrary, but just to give some context, this is almost the weight of more than 26,000 full-grown elephants that we've recovered from reaching our landfills and oceans
Wow.
from more than 300 locations across India, while empowering 400 collection partners, 45 waste processors, and more than 3,000 informal workers that are part of our supply chain. So that's a
Right.
small drop in the ocean in terms of the last picture, but that's what we're doing at ReCircle.
Right. So I want to understand, what led you to sort of build ReCircle, and again, you're working with the informal sector to integrate them and sort of build a cohesive ecosystem. How were you able to do that?
So our journey began, I mean, my background's been primarily in finance. I've done my graduation in accounting and finance and then gone ahead to do CFA. But just out of college, while I was doing my CFA, we went for a Google Startup Weekend where we pitched a very preliminary version of the idea. So we've been in the space for almost 9 years now. So it's been a long journey for us. And where we pitched a preliminary idea, the initial thought was when we got into the sector was with regards to that when we did our initial research, we found out that India was actually importing trash from rest of the world. So we're importing paper waste, plastic waste, glass waste, metal waste from across the world, from US, Europe, Middle East. And that as a problem statement felt very odd, right? Because one thing that we can be sure about is that one thing that we don't have a shortage in our country is the amount of waste that we produce. So to the initial years, we of course pivoted to see where we could eventually add value and then move to a B2B first business. We started from a B2C business and then pivoted to a B2B business itself. Coming to the second question in terms of, how we incorporated the informal sector, we also realized that, we are not experts in collection and sorting of waste. There's already people that are doing this, which are actually being underlooked and they get no access to any kind of schemes or recognition or dignity of work for that matter of fact. So our ethos at ReCircle is also to build an inclusive ecosystem where we empower these guys. Initially, of course, it was very hard to get them on board because as soon as you come in with a tech platform or you come in as a company working with the informal sector, there's kind of an apprehension in terms of people coming in on board. But we soon started realizing, the second generation or the third generation people that are younger and have seen technology being implemented, maybe a Kirana store or an Uber app or delivery apps itself. They've seen that there's a scalability that comes with technology. We were able to create case studies with the initial few people on board. And today, as we speak, we are almost in 300 locations where we're actively collecting plastic waste and also now looking at expanding from plastics to also textile waste as we speak.
Wow. Well, so two questions again. What are the sectors that you're sort of servicing, and what are you doing with this plastic waste? I mean, how are you sort of make it purposeful?
Okay. So there's been a lot of tailwind in the sector. Now our primary target audience is FMCG companies, and then secondary is essentially anybody that uses plastic as packaging in the ecosystem. So as a part of the plastic waste management rules, which were introduced in 2016, there's something called extended producer responsibility or EPR that's come into existence. Now, essentially what EPR says is that if you're a producer of plastic packaging, you need to take responsibility of collecting and making sure it gets recycled, and then also ensuring that you're now from April onwards, you're also to reuse recycled plastic in your supply chain as well. So majorly the plastic that is being produced is with the FMCG companies, as the packaging is the maximum amount of waste that they generate. And then secondly, absolutely anyone that basically uses plastic packaging is our main target audience in terms of who we're targeting itself. So that's the first part. Sorry, I missed your second part of the question, Ipsita. Sorry.
No, so I was asking you that how is this waste repurposed? Like, you're
Correct.
collecting,
Correct.
you're making it an organized sector. How is this whole
Yes.
packaging material being repurposed?
So plastics is while plastics is one head, but there are so many multiple subcategories with it, may it be HDP, LDP, PET, PVC. So there are seven subgrades of plastics, and then within which there are multiple subgrades as well. Now, what we've done is that we've worked with different processors and specialize in these different grades of plastics. Largely, our aim is to ensure that this gets recycled into new raw material, which is then being used to make new products out of the plastic granules that get collected. And then there's a certain component which is essentially end of life, which is cannot be recycled or is non-recyclable in nature, where we ensure that it goes to a government-approved co-processing or waste-to-energy factory, where it is being used as alternative fuel to ensure that it can be used in a proper way, can be disposed of. And then apart from this, we'll work on a lot of smaller pilot projects on plastics to road, plastics to sheets, plastics to oil, depending on where we are able to collect this material and partner with different processors across the ecosystem.
Right. What are some of the challenges in the sector, Rahul, that you guys have faced? And how have you sort of overcome those? What are some learnings? And you've been around for 9 years now. From the time you started to now, what have been some learnings that you have sort of implemented in how you've grown from there on?
Oh, absolutely. So, the space of the sector that we are in terms of sustainability and clean tech, when we launched in 2016, clean tech circular economy was not even a sector that was in existence. This is more so in the last 2 to 3 years or 4 years where this has come into the picture itself. So through the initial days, it was very hard to get not just business, one is to get business from people as well as to find the right kind of investors to come in on board. But through that learning, when we were not able to raise money through the initial days, we basically worked on building a sustainable while we are building a sustainable business. We also wanted to be financially sustainable, and we
Right.
pivoted to the B2B side and ensured that we are able to actually build a bottom line positive business while we are growing as well. So the challenge was that there was no tailwind in the sector. The sector did not exist. But over the last 3, 4 years, so the first 4, 5 years, when we were able to sustain that period of time, we've seen that the shift has come in along. And now this has become a stress sector where people are interested in knowing about. Brands have taken their global sustainable commitments, where there's more traction coming in the space. So the challenge was to basically sustain during that initial phase when we were not getting the amount of business. And now, so that we've been able to scale up, we're proud to say that we've got investors like Flipkart Ventures, Acumen, Mumbai Angels, venture capitalists coming on board to support our journey as they now see a proof of concept as well as scale up that's happening. And there's lots more for us to do in the future. So they're seeing the vision in terms of where we're heading towards.
Right, it's great that you didn't give up when it was a lean period, and you stuck to your goals. What would you tell an entrepreneur who wants to sort of get into the green sector? What would you advise them?
So the green sector is, it's not as a traditional sexy business. If you're a consumer tech startup and you see that, that's most entrepreneurs want to build that sexy tech business itself. So get into it only if you're really, really passionate in the space. If you have a long-term horizon in terms of where you see that the impact will come in along, because green businesses are not the ones that will show you the impact in 2 months or 3 months or 6 months. You will take time to build this businesses itself. So only get into it if you're here in for the long game. And then finally, just be persistent. I think this space is a sunrise sector. There's a lot that is being done. There's a lot of growth opportunities available. And now more and more consumers as well as investors and businesses are taking action in this space. So you're in here at the right time at the right place, but just be persistent and stick to your goals.
Sure. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for such great insights, and all the best to 𝗿𝗂𝗃𝗃 and the team, Rahul.
Thank you, Ipsita, for having me. Bye-bye.